just mute me, and then I'll just put the speakers out. I don't know why I'm breaking apart in here.
Not given me a firm date. I do know that that was something that we considered when we were selecting the bricks. So he did bring a few brick samples and a few mortar samples because we were trying to best match what exists there today. And we were taking into consideration what was in stock and available. The one that was selected was readily available. I think it was coming from Texas, but he was concerned about a few other different types of brick, just given they had longer lead times. To get that material. So I can verify those dates, those exact dates, and send that information to the group.
Okay, because I know he wanted to have the brickwork done prior to doing the roof because it had to be tied in, right?
Yep.
They started the brickwork today, for the soldier court on both ends, yeah. Is there a smoke test on water? Like with the degrees being cold, I saw him mixing it. So you guys approved a certain water type? And
yes.
You see, are they putting antifreeze in the water?
I'd have to,
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'd have to pull up the spec, but usually the winter, the cold weather conditions will drive the necessity for the antifreeze.
Right. Yeah, because it's not tempered and heated, it's just,
Yeah.
Because I was out there a lot.
Okay, and you mentioned something about a door.
Yeah, we were replacing the door at the top of the ramp. That was actually a really long lead item. We had approved it and he had ordered it months ago at this point, right when we started the project. So I will have to get the status of that, but I know it was a longer lead item. So that was another item we were continuing to track in conjunction with these changes.
Do you know if he stayed with Conair?
Yes, I believe he did.
Because he had alerted me way back that there was a lead time issue there.
Yeah.
Thought he might consider an alternative.
So I will ask for kind of any outstanding scope items, if he could give us a sense of, expected dates of kind of either if materials are coming in, when that install will happen or work will happen, and kind of completion dates, and I will send that for your distribution and reference.
Done.
So when is the next construction update meeting? The one's on Tuesday?
Yeah, so we had carried them through the end of January tentatively. So I don't believe there is one next week, given the holiday. So the next one would be the 9th of January. I can reach out to him and see if he wants to touch base sooner than that after the new year, given kind of those 2 weeks of holiday time. So I will update that calendar invite if it's necessary.
Quick question?
Yeah.
So, of these outstanding items and then anything else that you'll be providing us in an outstanding scope list, is there anything else of major import that we are looking at over the next several months, or is this what we're seeing here, these last 3 things that were approved, kind of the end of the line for the major repairs, or are there other things that we should be looking at?
So those items that we just mentioned are the kind of the last components that are currently integrated into Dubon's and ours contract. So if there were any other major repairs that the committee wanted to consider, we should discuss that and talk about potential avenues for implementation. But currently, those items, the kind of those 3 changes that were approved at last meeting, and the door, kind of the remaining current scope.
Rebecca,
Is there-
I have a list.
Okay, well, the chief just notified us that he has a list, surprise.
Well, the list was from the last building
Yeah.
committee.
Okay,
Very red and troubleshot, but
priority,
importance.
okay.
So just the list that was developed, and I know some things are done in the process. So it was brick fascia filling, roof leaks. Now with the roof, I just want to make everyone understand the system, the building. So I'm glad that we approved the repair of the main roof. And I was up on there today because we had an active leak in the captain's office with this storm. And I had A&M, I forget the name of the company, Sheet Metal Roofing, come out and look at it. So we have major puddles on the lower roof. So it's about 1,800 square feet. I think it's like 60 by 30, Jeff, that section of the building.
yeah, that's about right, yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, so that is, I believe, the same age as the main roof. So the roof you're repairing is the main building of the roof, but not the whole roof. And I believe it's the same age. And now we're getting issues. We've always had them. We've had the leaky ceiling tiles, and we know it's leaking from the roof somewhere because when I was up on the roof with, it's actually, his name is Croce, he's the son of a state trooper. He works for the company. The water may be getting in from like the outside and running joint rafters that hold up the roof, and then coming down and leaking out the tiles in a certain area. So we've had the leaky tiles. So with that roof now, we've always had stains there, but never like an active drip like we had on the inside. So we had actually a bucket catching the water. So he was looking at that. We're going to rake back the gravel, which is pea stone, and then look to see if there's any blistering or around the drains, because there are 2 roof drains there, and they're all clogged with vegetation and dirt and whatnot. So with that said, with these, repairs that we're looking at, with the other committee with importance is that, so the roof gets fixed, the ceiling tiles that are stained can be replaced, because, you know, it's not a waste of time or money. But then the asbestos on top of the tile, we can't move it. So that's why we're always caught in this catch-22 of what we want to do first. It's always from the top down, right? So I just wanted to make, you know, the town council and building committee aware that there's still a whole section of roof that is as old as, I believe, the other roof. And it's leaking, and now it's leaking worse. So they're gonna come out with an emergency repair, because if it rains again, I don't know if it will, you know, whatever penetration it did worse, right? So, and what's happening now, and this is the worst time of the year, it's 40 or 30 during the day, it's 20 at night. So whatever water's there is freezing, and what happens, it expands, makes cracks bigger, makes leaks worse. So I have them coming out. So I don't know if you, and I know we're talking about withdrawing money from what's left at the bond, and I know at the last meeting, you wanted kind of a balance sheet, like where we're up to, where we spend. And I know it's about that, where you want to spend first, but after listening, because I was on the meeting, but I was on the call, if you're repairing that, I don't know if we want to look at, or and if we're looking at just the renovation, building, whatever the way the town wants to go with another bond or whatever, is we may want to look at that. So, you know.
So it's a 30
So-
license, but we don't the whole roof except the 30 license.
Yeah, Jeff has, it's about that. Sorry, Jeff, what'd you say?
So I guess the question here is, do we want to request a price from Dubon to include that in that scope?
Well, I think people
In the
want,
whole roof?
I did work like that, they're there, they have all the stuff, and I don't know if it's the way, the direction of town council, which is the new building committee, if they are set on doing a renovation, it starts in the roof. So if they're already approved and they're gonna spend all that money on that roof to fix the main building, I think it would be prudent, my opinion, that's all, is that, and we have leaks, is to get it all done, especially if we're not gonna go to the building.
Well,
We're gonna look for renovation.
I think it's prudent to get it forward.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, that's why.
Until like 2 years, so if you're having that much money,
But I was like, oh my
I
God.
agree, we should fix all of
It's
it.
not good, there's a lot of it, and it's not good either.
That's why I was on the bumper. If you did decide to still do
They're
it.
both the same, because everyone thought it was the lower half, it was done later, it was rubber roof, they said same deal. Yeah, it's tar and gravel, so I just.
Yeah, it's still a built-up roof.
Yeah, I would suggest that. So the other things on the list, because I don't want to digress too much, is the asbestos, leaky windows. Now, I know Paul and I discussed about windows and they can getting what's broken, what's not. So we have two different types of windows. We had windows that were vinyl replacement that were in the police side of the building, and there's old aluminum windows, which were on the town side. So it's been the town and the police since 2019, 2020, when they moved out into this building. So we have, because of the storm, we have replacement windows that were done, I believe, in 2016, which was great, you know, they framed up. They're broken, they're not, the jambs are crooked, the sills are broken. Those definitely have to be replaced on our side. As far as the brown aluminum windows, they are not good. I just actually put them back in place and blown out by the storm and kind of locked it in. We're not occupying that side of the building, and I think more forethought has to go into those windows. Because if we are thinking of a renovation, and I would hope it's 100% renovation, is that you have interior walls, you have ceiling, you have a lot going on. I have plans from RGB, from major studios, anything that was designed on that side of the building, because to make a clean swap and try to keep, you know, services 24/7, if we get everything done on one side and flip to the other side, which is very challenging, because you're always going to have to get temporary trailers. That's like, but with that said, I don't know if we want to rush into, even though we can fix the ones on our side, because they're active leaking, they're duct taped in, they fall, they need to be fixed. So that would, I would look into something like that on this list. the floor of the dispatch center is horrible, that needs to be done. The abatement, and I spoke to a few people about, I think, and I don't know how far away the dream is of getting a new station built new, but whether you demo, and tell me, anyone here tell me if I'm wrong, if you demo that building or renovate it full, that asbestos has, right?
If you demo it, then you have to get rid of the hazardous materials. If you are doing
So,
you have to get rid of it.
so I would
If you
say-
are,
But
if you are renovating, then there's a little bit of latitude because you might be able to encapsulate some of the contaminated materials, like for instance, a floor tile, a resilient floor tile that is not broken, is not peeling up. You can oftentimes encapsulate it, which means you put a new floor over it. But it, you know, it's a requirement.
Yeah, that was planned with the major studio renovations. Myself and clerk of the works at that time, Dan Jover, that's what we came up with. We were just gonna pour slab over it and call it that. So I totally understand that.
Now, I will say, you know, that in a building that you plan on keeping for a long time, I would say that encapsulation is probably short-term thinking. But if you're trying to make a building last, you know, 5 years or 10 years, then encapsulation is a perfectly good option. So I think you've got to weigh that into the equation a little bit. Now, you know, the issue of removing asbestos, you know, again, if we're renovating, if we have to run new walls up to the ceiling that contains, you know, has asbestos fibers, you're probably better off removing the ceiling. You know, if you've got it wrapped around pipes or anything like that, you're probably better off removing it. But there are certain, sometimes it's in drywall joints. You know, in a renovation, you don't usually remove those. They stay in place as long as they're not called friable, which means they're falling apart.
Okay, so that's another whole challenge. Again, where we're gonna go, what path we're gonna take. The concrete repair and the sidewalk for the handicap ramp, that is done. Did a great job. So that's checked off. The ceiling tiles I spoke about, the chip and peeling paint, that's a cosmetic, but, you know, we need plaster, joint compound, you know, professional go, we move so much stuff. Again, a cosmetic thing, but I think it's short money. It probably will go a long way with the rank and file getting stuff straightened and plastered and repainted. Exterior doors, now the door we spoke about at the top of the handicap ramp. Now the rot and decay on one side of it, just like you can see through it, the water's getting through now because of the rust. And there's an issue with the rear door that we take the prisoners into. It's still operable. The doors in the back that are on the second floor in the rear of the building, the basement that go in the gym section, they're operable, they lock, but they're horrible, but it's something that, depending on where we're gonna go with the project and with the drawings, the scheme, it's still big work until we can get a scheme to where we can probably repair short-term or long-term. That's something that we can do, you know, whatever money's there, what's left, how much we want to invest in it, because you could spend a lot less money on a door that's operable and manageable, but not the door that you're really going to put in a piece building that you build new or renovate. So
I think your operative question here is the important one. Is, you know, are we making the repairs today and they're going to live with them for a while, or are we expecting that there's going to be some renovation or addition renovation or, you know, other thing? Because that changes the choices that you make. You know, if our goal is to stabilize the buy time until we make decisions, then, you know, maybe some of those things you don't spend money on today. But if our goal is to, you know, to get a building that they can survive in for an indeterminate amount of time, and maybe you do more repairs now. So we kind of need that information to make that choice.
Right, and one of the, on the list, one of the very important requests from the trust that I totally wholeheartedly 100% agree with, that needs to be done after the facade of the ADJOURN, is the pipe the piping that comes down from the ceiling drains, any part of the building, they're about 6 to 8 inches that dump out into the back lot where we take prisons in. And it's a constant battle getting it cleared from ice, this and that. So what they had suggested, and we've had them repaired quite a few times because it's a bell and spigot system that has hammered in material to keep it from leaking. So it's a real old system and they move around.
Yeah, it's usually lead.
So, yeah, exactly. We've had rubber boots that are couplings that we can patch in PVC, which is what they use nowadays, or cast iron, with welded or couplings that are specially made in cast iron, ductile iron piping. So what we want to do is turn it from coming down from the roof, the ceiling, and going out to the back lot, to turning it 180 degrees and going out to the grass area where the generator is. So that's one of the things that we wanted, that the trust saw, that we saw, that we know about, that's a challenge for us to move out that way. And that section of piping has been kind of patchwork to not leak. So if we can cut it to the ceiling above the cell area, get a real good coupling and just go out that way. It's a lot less distance to the back and it's a lot better for it to dump out in the grass where nobody walks and you don't take prisoners. So that's something that I think should be done, like a roof. And since we
So-
know what,
I was just said, being near the generator though, would it pose a problem if there's too much water that goes into that area?
I don't think so because there's a lot of grassy area there. And I would let it up to the professionals if they say, well, maybe we should do a dry well there because they have honeycomb concrete precast that they could dig a 4-foot hole, put riprap around it, sink the honeycomb. It's a dry well, right? For great water. It's just runoff. They could do something like that. If it was my house, that's what I would do, just to make certain, good question, that we didn't have a problem with it running down the hill, back into the back parking lot.
It's, where's our sewer septic? Are we on sewer?
But it's sewer, it's
Where's-
connected to
Okay.
sides.
Septic.
Yes, no, we
Blow
don't,
away.
well, there's a well there that does, I don't know, maps, actually, but there is a artesian well there on that side that comes to Stan's Street. Yes.
I think what we have to do though, is we have to do a list. We need a list of what the trust is requiring us to do in order to get this thing done, right? In order to get this thing insured. So that's the list. And then we have to have an order of importance to list the additional things listed in an order of importance in addition to what they're saying. So first and foremost has to be that list that the trust is saying.
Right.
And then we can start picking away at, based on an order of importance on your list.
Right, so, and my list is coordinated with the trust list. This is just things that, you know, either they were cosmetic or weren't on the list that they started back in, I think it's almost a year. But the other issue that we really need to address is in the boiler room, where a thimble is where an exhaust of a boiler system goes into a chimney. And it's all, when they put it in, it's all starting to peel and break off to break the seal. So but that's something that we could do through maintenance account for our annual maintenance of fixing this and that. But I don't know if it's going to get into any big money because once you get, I mean, it's not really enough for a coordinated RFP. That's what a lot of these things fall in between of, oh, can we just get a couple of people out here to get a quote, fix it, what's the number, and then if the number's this much, it has to come in front of you guys for approval, and you need bids.
You get quotes.
That coming in, right, I'm just saying, so if it's under a certain amount of money, we can get a professional license, of course, and fix it. I'd like to see that get cleaned up and fixed. We're cleaning up just the equipment, and we've thrown out a lot, and we're trying to make it so we can get that area cleaned up. That's the other area, just speaking from being in the building, that I think we need to address. And it may be some money to do that, I don't know. Maybe they can just seal it with the fire coated paint. But that's just, those are the things that I had on the list that we had already spoke about, and part of those items on the list are from the trust, but I think John's right that we have the things we have to fix for that, because let's be honest, this all got kicked off from that letter, and we had to fix this, but now we're into it. Let's do the things that we need to do, and then collectively, and this is all my opinion, to sit back and say what direction we want to go and what plan are we going to accept, the one that's already been developed, or are we going to go forward in getting a comprehensive plan again on what maybe different directions.
Okay, well, we have a list, so there's the answer to my question. Okay.
Do you
So-
have anything else to add, Jeff?
Well, you know, there's a little bit here that's getting into some shaky area if we are going to continue doing this with Dubon. You know, quite frankly, in areas they're very fussy about procurement. You've got to be careful how much scope you add on to a contract before you're getting into a violation of procurement rules. You know, the roof that we added, probably not a big deal. You know, could we look at doing the rest of the roof? Probably, but you may want to be careful about how far you go with adding a bunch of little repairs to this particular contract.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're doing. I think we were just talking, you know, the chief is just
Yeah.
explaining to us what issues in terms of priority that have come up and haven't been addressed, and, you know, we'd like to address some of them. It doesn't necessarily, I don't think, mean that we'd want to add on to the Dubon contract right now. You know, we may, if we find that there's enough of a scope of work, we'd have to go out to bid again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
So I guess my question to the committee is, would you want us to seek a price from Dubon on the remainder of the roof?
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, we're already, you know, so far into it.
Okay.
I mean, so,
How are they gonna do the other one?
right, have they looked at it? Do you know if they've looked at it?
They
Have
looked at
have
it yesterday,
Dubon looked at it yesterday?
but it's different look. You're looking at it to redo the roof. But
Right.
they've been up there, and Jeff would probably say, they've been up there and they know,
So they're familiar with it? Okay.
and it's a less complicated roof because there's only two protrusions to the roof, which are two.
Yep.
regions.
All right.
So and I'm just looking at it as a person that's not work, like, I'm here, like, while I'm here, you might as well do that, right? And if you get someone, and I know procurement, and I'm just talking
Yeah, right.
out of my experience, actually, is that now you're gonna have two companies doing one roof, with two different warranties, two different companies. You walk on my roof, and I, you know,
Yeah, well,
you
I-
get into that,
right.
right? So I just wanted to make you guys, this is the fourth building committee I've been involved with since this bond.
You're old.
So I would just say that, I want to make sure you guys, people are informed as to what's, like policy, what we're actually doing is actually is written. So what we're actually discussing and making decisions on is what's happening real time at the station.
Yeah, and
There's no-
right. I think, though, that, I don't know about anybody else, it's the first time I hear about this 30 by 60 section of roof. I mean, that wasn't brought up to us by anybody.
No, that's where the chief, that's,
I think we talked about the other, that.
But there was nothing that, right, but
Last time.
you
But I don't think it was
say that it was,
material enough that
No.
they would go and replace it, but
Like-
much.
right.
well, no, the issue is that the roof leaks was the reason why the facade was pulling away from the building in the front. So when Tecton did that, everyone was concentrated on that roof because of the damage that was physically and visibly seen. But that doesn't mean the roof's not leaking. That's why the ceiling tiles come into play with all the stains. Ben said, oh, every building had stains. Yeah, well, there's a reason why it's stains.
Right.
Whether it's a plumbing leak, a drain leak, a roof leak, right? So I think with being in the same age, the leaks were there, but they weren't as bad, and over time they get worse. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think.
And 100%, like we have that I gave you from a year ago, that the tile was green, but we can't act on it because there's asbestos there. We don't want to act on it unless the roof is fixed, right? So that's the catch-22 I was talking about. What working on you get. So,
no, but
but you're right. When you don't think that roof is there, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, no, there's another roof.
Right, no, what I'm saying is that Tecton didn't tell us, you know, none, the building committee didn't tell us the first time, unless I've been sleeping, that I've heard that that roof also has issues. Because if it did, I think we would have taken, when we made the vote a couple of, 3 or 4 weeks ago to have a roof done, we would have said, well, while we're there,
Yeah.
we are going, and exactly for the reasons you're saying, for the,
Well, right.
economy of scale, to have one person do the job, to have one 20-year
Yeah.
guarantee.
So when I walk in on Monday morning, that's why I said, why?
Yeah.
Gotta bring it up.
Well, I'm glad you did, and this is extenuating, like, the DPW director will tell you, this is a crazy rainstorm we got. This was not a normal thing, but, a roof shouldn't leak anything, period. So,
I get
yes,
it.
so yes, Jeff.
So I just want to point out that we did talk about that the work was limited to that upper roof where we had all the extensive flashing repairs.
Right.
That didn't change the fact that we actually pointed on the drawing and showed that this is the roof we're addressing, because that's where all the repairs are. Do I think
Right.
that if the roof is just as old, does it need to be replaced? Yeah, it probably should be. But we also had a discussion about whether it was a good idea, given the fact that we were facing the possibility of renovations or changes. So the energy at that time was focused on the core problem. The chief is not incorrect that it should be considered, and I would absolutely get a price on it. But at the time, that was not the discussion that we had.
Wasn't
So just to expound on that, I don't know if I'm talking too much, but you just brought up a great point that I want everyone to understand, the public, people in this room, is take that example of the roof. Well, we weren't told about the lower roof and there were any problems and da-da-da-da-da. So now look at the facade in the brick. So the bricks were falling, the mortar was falling out, the sign was falling out, the water was coming in on that end of the building, which is the north side. That's where all buildings in the world get hammered because of the way the storms run on the East Coast, right? But if you walk around that building, there's cracks everywhere in the masonry. It all needs to be cut out, especially in the rear where you can see structural cracks from the corners.
Right, we've seen them.
Window jams. So let's make no mistake, it's just not the front of the building, although that's what was red flagged for the insurance company. Any mason that walks around that building says no. And we're just at a different level of decay in the building in the rear because it doesn't face north.
Right.
And it didn't have the sun.
Yeah.
And you can see the copper coating in the back, slowly moving away and separating from the building, but it's only at a lesser stage of it because of where it sits west, because it doesn't get the wind, it doesn't, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to understand that, although it's not said for protect, not said from the trust, doesn't mean we have a lot of problems around the whole, that's all.
So that makes me, can I just, while he's talking about the, the copper and the sign, that did come down in a couple of pieces, right? So is the intention to put that back? And I know we had talked for aesthetic purposes to put the copper back, or is that something that, is that our decision, I guess, or?
I thought we said keep it inside.
I thought we
I
wanted
don't think the copper's going back, because the way they took it down, I don't think that can go back.
The copy, as the copper was severely damaged, so I think they were very concerned about being able to get it back. The building sign, I think, is your decision, but that was discussed.
And I just
I thought we
wanted
discussed that.
a question on the sign, because I know I was on the call with Yvonne, said, because we brought the crane, for each spring, they ended up using a crane, because they couldn't do it with sizzle lift, is it, and I don't know if it's part of the bond or part of the bid, if it's a change order that they're gonna take a crane and put it back in, which is gonna cost more money, and I would say, don't waste your money putting the sign back up, because it's not school anymore, not anything
Right,
against the sign,
keep the sign.
but keep the sign, and make a nice memorial, maybe years, like that, but I know the copper's not.
Okay, I just didn't, I
I
don't
think we
know.
said
But Jeff,
inside,
I mean, they would say it's not big, but I would just say,
Yeah, I think we decided to.
It's more work putting it back, 'cause that, and I'll tell you, I had discussions with mechanics in the field, in front, because that sign that I've worked in this industry was hand spool, wasn't cut with a saw. And when you put, it had no anchors on it, it just sat gravity on 2 layers of brick. So to put it back, they're gonna have to do some kind of welding or some structural, base in which to lag that back, whether they use plates and weld it, concrete.
No, we did discuss it,
Yeah.
and I think we thought we would keep it down. Yeah, no, that's okay. All right, well,
Yeah, that's it. Yes, so I guess, when do you think we should organize?
Can I
and-
just,
Yeah.
can I just ask a couple questions? A lot of issues were put on the table. We did talk about, getting a price for the rest of the roof. There was questions about additional exterior doors. Do we want to seek pricing on that or not?
well,
I think, to be quite honest,
get it.
if the bond money wasn't gonna be spent, I was gonna look for it in capital for next year to replace these doors.
Well, let's
Just
get
the
prices.
We'll have to act on it, I think, like that.
Yes, please.
Okay, so there's two other issues that I heard that I want to ask specifically about. The first was the thimble. Personally, I think you'd be better off doing that as a repair project. Hopefully, we need to see what your limit is before you whether you can just get 3 prices or whether you need to bid that. I suspect you're in the range where you could get 3 prices. The drain line, in this current project, we don't have plumbers. So I would be inclined to seek that as a separate repair project as well. But I think it needs to be looked at whether or not there's going to be any issue with asbestos. I tend to think not, based on what you described. But I would seek that as a separate project. That would be my recommendation, particularly since there's procurement issues and add-ons.
Yep. Okay.
Would it be helpful, since that we had created an initial list from the trust, Chief, maybe you and I can just touch base and we can consolidate these lists and have it in one spot for everyone? I don't think that would be a big effort for us to kind of get one list together of all the items you were mentioning. I was kind of jotting down, and there was, to your point, a lot of that overlaps. So we could probably get that into one consolidated list, if that would be helpful for the committee going forward.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, when did you want to get back together so we can review the pricing of the roof and maybe the exterior door pricing?
Sure. So, let's get the pricing.
You can put one on tentatively for a couple of weeks, but you need to have a conversation with Chris to make sure you
I
can
do.
have pricing in that time.
Agreed. I was thinking potentially the second week of January or third week. Yeah, I do want to confirm with Chris that he can get those numbers for us, and I'm not sure if he's taking any time off over the holidays.
Well, do you want to tentatively plan the 11th then at 5:45, and if something comes up, we'll just reschedule?
Jeff, what do you think? Does that date work for you?
I'm a
or-
little bit concerned that if he's already got roofing materials on order, that there may be an advantage to trying to move quicker.
Agreed.
So I think the first thing you need to have to do is the conversation with Chris tomorrow.
Okay.
And then if it makes sense, if he can get a price ready so that you could do it at the
At the same
first
time.
week in January, that might even be a better opportunity. Because, if we can add on to the order and get it all here at one time, that would be awesome, as opposed to waiting yet again.
So we have a council meeting on the second, we do it at the council meeting if we get it, or do it before? Instead of creating a second meeting?
If the pricing is available, then yes, we could.
Right, yeah.
It's- So Rebecca will reach out to Dubon, and if they indicate that they can get pricing in time for that, then we'll shoot you an email right away and say we'd like to present that at that meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Does that work?
Yes.
Beautiful.
And when was that meeting? I apologize, I missed that.
Second.
The second? Okay, great.
Perfect.
And I think you could probably just send an email with pricing on the doors, and we can just review that, and then at the next meeting, after the council meeting, we can always just discuss that. Okay, so we'll wait back to hear from you on whether it's going to be the 2nd, or we have to schedule another meeting.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
All right, thank you.
All right, have a great holiday. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You all as
too.
well.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Okay. Oh, John.
Some water, but it's gone.
What else is on the agenda?
Just discussing, whether to move forward with the new.
Do you need the agenda?
What our next steps.
Oh. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to discuss continuing as the council being, serving as the building committee, or if we're gonna start to look and form a new committee with a new resolution.
Yeah, Madam President, the the agenda item, I have it in front of me, is
Thank you.
changing, discussion vote or other action on changing the name and creating a new resolution for updated responsibilities. Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, I just wanted to put it on the table. We don't have to come to a decision tonight, but it's working, I think, pretty well when we have, an opportunity to discuss things and not have many intermediaries. So I just wanted to put it on the agenda so the discussion could be started. I know people have made application for, another MBRTF. I'd like to change that acronym if we could, because it drives me crazy. But that's really the only reason I want to put it on. We're just to try to get the conversation going and see what people thought, and, see if there's, should we get someone who is a clerk of the works, for instance, who we would have as our sole intermediary, who would have all the information, who could get right back to us and work with, whoever we have as a construction company. So I don't know how anybody else feels, but I just thought, you know what? If we're not going to do it, we should tell people right away, or if we're thinking we should do it, we should start looking at who's applied and just throw it out there for discussion.
I mean, I think we're making great progress and we're getting information,
Yeah.
Readily. So I feel at some times when we had another committee, it was taking us so long to get information and be able to act on things. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction, and I think it's, really important that we get the building dry and we get it to a good point that we can do other, repairs or modifications, or to at least get the building safe till we know what we're going to do in the future. So I think the council serving as the building committee for right now is moving in the right direction, and maybe just let everyone know who has applied, that we'll keep their applications on file, and once we're at a point that we want to maybe release it, that we'd reach back out to them. But I mean, that's how I feel. I just think we're moving in the right direction. We're making changes. You can obviously see things going on there. So I don't know. I think it's going in the right direction for right now.
I agree. Things are getting done in real time.
Mhm.
Decisions are getting made right away.
Mhm.
I say we just keep it the way it is until we decide that, until we know which direction we're gonna go in. We don't know right now which direction we're gonna go in. We'll keep things as they are. We're getting a lot done.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes a lot of sense to leave the council as, the building committee. I think in just listening to that last call as well, we're getting to a point where I think we need to make a decision about if we're going to go down a renovation path or if we're going to build new, because the last thing we want to do is, I think, is sink a lot of sink a lot of money in things that maybe we don't need, we can prioritize differently, instead of trying to fix everything if there is a different action that's going to take. So I think, I think we need to be mindful of the timeline that, that presents as well. And if we have to go back out for a bond question again or a vote in the fall, like I know was discussed during the process. So I think we're coming up to those decisions. And I think, I said at one of the council meetings, I think before we fill another committee, I think we need to make that determination and not set them up for failure. Or, they spend time on one thing and then we change it. Like, I think we need to make that decision and then move forward, whatever that is.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to a point where the station obviously needs, I mean, I know some of the things you mentioned were cosmetic, but there's been so many years that nothing has been done. So even though it is cosmetic, it's still something you don't want to work in every day. You want it to be at least looking presentable, So with nothing being done in that building for so many years, even if we decided, which I still think it's a whole nother process now to see what we are going to do. So I can't even say that rushing into the November ballot question would be even an option. But even if we did, it's still going to be several years. So we still need to make sure the building is secure, it's dry, you can work in it. It's, it's serving its purpose for right now.
Right, and I don't think you're even at that level.
No, we're nowhere near that to say we're going to turn around we'd have to have it ready, in August, that we're going to turn around in August and say, yeah, we're going to put out another ballot question. I mean, we're nowhere near that. I mean.
No, we'd actually have to be going to the legislature, by May.
Right, so we're nowhere
yeah.
near that. So I think it's just securing the building. It's getting it to a point that, it's okay to work in. Is it the perfect scenario? No, we all know that something needs to be done to it, but at least if we're keeping it dry, we're keeping, we're making maintenance, we're changing the maintenance structure of it, we're getting things done. I think, at least we're moving in the right direction. And
and I think even things like painting and scraping and
that's
leaky
still
windows
important.
and things like that, that's, you're working in there, it's important to have it be a clean environment, and even if we, I know it probably impacts our decision-making, like when you're getting, you get a new door and it's not the door you'd put in if you were gonna do, a brand-new building, but it's, are you gonna do a renovation? But I still think we still need to put in quality things so that the building itself is maintained properly, from this point. We should have a list of things that need to be checked again, like one of the things they mentioned about the, in the boiler, right, and having that should be something I would think the boiler company, whoever that is, should be checking. I mean, these are things that, we have to have a list of things, and we have to make sure that somebody stays on top of them so that in 5 years we don't have these things cropping up again. And
Well, like we were saying, there'd be two lists, a list from the trust that we have to get done,
yeah.
and then the list of the additional stuff that the chief was just talking about, and then we stop picking away. Once we're done with the list from the trust, we stop picking away at the other list.
well, you guys, you're going to make they're going to make one list now with start, from top to bottom, like the priorities.
Right.
And it's going to include the trust and stuff. But, like we're talking about, okay, it may not be the door. If we were to build new, it might not be the door that is ideal. But it's kind of concerning hearing that windows were replaced in 2016 and they're no good. So obviously we didn't do quality, right? So we just put a Band-Aid on it. So
There's 1, 2, and 3, right? Small, medium, and large. So if you want to
Can
have
you talk?
Hello? So you're 100% correct. So if there's always like the bottom level product, there's a middle level product which has, warranties and lasts a certain amount of years, and then you have your top shelf, right, for any windows, doors, flooring. Depending on how the council or a new building committee, what direction they're going to go, we still need a door that locks, is functional, but that functionality can come with different prices, right? So I think you're not wasting your money because you need to replace it. But do you want to replace it with the gold standard or just replace it with a functional door
Right.
that we're gonna be okay with for a few years until
Right.
the direction can be,
Determined.
channeled,
Sure.
and you can make your decision. Could I make a suggestion on the building committee question?
Mhm.
So if you were to go in the direction of a building committee, can you put 2 counselors on the committee, or do you only need 1? You need representation from whatever sitting council there is to be at those meetings. So
That's right.
I thought, in my experience of witnessing what passed in the last 3 years, was communication and information maybe wasn't the best, but if you had 2 councils, or at least still keep 1, and I know Paul was on there from the last council, but if there's a new council, put one of the council members on there. So I think that makes it clear. I think the way it's working now is fine, but whatever way or direction you're gonna go, it has to be all on board, 100%, this is what we're gonna do.
Right.
As far as the bond question for the presidential election, there's a lot of thought that I think still has to go into it.
Correct.
But, and again, just look around the state, what's going on with Gloucester, what just happened with Forster, what happened with Hallowell Building. I think Bill Clinton said it's the economy, stupid, it's square footage and the cost of it, and you're not gonna get away from it. If that's the industry standard, and it's $700 a square foot, like an engineer said at one of the meetings, whether you're building a bathroom or a police station, that's the cost of doing business because of what projects cost. So that's one thing that you have to wrap your head around on, like, where we're gonna go. And I don't think anyone in the town, because I talked to everyone in town, wasn't a 50-50 vote, but there's still a lot of people in town that want a building, want a better building, right? So I think we really do have to go back to the drawing board at a certain, but again, I'm very happy and satisfied with the trust came along, we have that list, we have another list, it's not that nothing was done with the building, the police department never had the right to grab the money from the bond because it was tied up here first. Then COVID hit. And then when they moved out in 19 or 20, they meaning town government moved into here, it was almost like we were right into the bond question, right? So now that we have that pool of money and things are getting done and whatnot, that's great. And again, whatever, I always said, just put it to the people, let them vote, whatever they want, but whoever is the building committee or the town council that's sitting, because we're gonna have an election, needs to all agree on what they're gonna do, what they wanna do, and push forward from there.
And
That's all.
I think that's,
I still think I think we need to decide what we're gonna do with Tecton, if we're gonna let them go, or we're gonna keep them. I think coming up with what the future of the Bushy School looks like, because even the trust has said it's not a station. So I agree, if we're gonna just make repairs, we need to make the repairs that allows the police to do their job safely and effectively, securely, not flooding. But I think there's probably ways to value engineer and maybe reduce some square footage, or look at some other things if that is the direction, regardless if it's renovate or build new. And I think it will come down to how much time do we want to put in to get to that solution, if the intent all along was to have something for the 24 election. If we don't go that path, then I've been saying it all along, I think we need to put the work in to figure out how to build a public safety complex. I think that would be ideal. You could build new. You could update all the technology. Just looking at Gloucester, they were 13, 14 million without really doing much testing on the sites. Foster had passed a $3 million bond and the price came back at 10. So the chief is right. I mean, the costs surrounding
but
us.
they increased their square footage too.
Right, but
so-
it's not getting away from the fact that it's
Right.
only going to get more
Right,
expensive the longer we wait. So what is 18 million this year? Most projects are at 5% escalation. You could be looking at, by just doing nothing, 20, 25 million in 4 years. I've looked at some of the projects as I'm involved in Hallowell, and some of the communities that decided not to build, if they didn't, what was 18 million would be 22 just by the plan sitting on a shelf. So I think it is something we need to be mindful of, because it will have a downhill impact on the tax rate.
Yeah.
Can I just make a comment on the public safety building?
Yeah, sure.
So I've never been against a public safety complex, but there are some issues that need to be addressed, and maybe you have a search committee or a meeting with all the mines that run the show, like for the fire, it's a private fire company, right?
Right, yeah,
that
there's the
runs-
municipal.
So I've even
municipalizing of it all.
spoken to Chief Chartier. We've had discussions. Spoke with Chief Chartro when he was retired Chief Chartro about those sort of things. So what has to happen is there's two pieces of property. I don't know who owns them. I don't know who runs them. Where the two fire stations are. It works fine now because you have a north and a south. Because they really have to be centrally located or located where they can go to the fire, right? The second thing is how, and lack of a better term, legally, how do you municipalize, or do they
Right.
even have to be municipalized to work in tandem with us?
Right.
There are jurisdictions all over Rhode Island that have both, and work fine, and I have no problem with that. It's just a location, the municipalization of the fire department, and what are you gonna do with the parcels? And going back to, again, the common question, it's the amount of the bond that didn't get passed, it's the amount of money that people wanna spend. That adds a lot more money to it, and that's what I was saying all along, is like, if the people don't want an $18 million bond for, you know, a standard police station that has everything every other police station has, when you add a fire station and stick it to it,
Well, I think that,
I'm
yeah,
not gonna say double the price.
no.
No, but I did hear a lot of people
Smithfield
say they
already
would have
looked
passed the
at
public
a
safety
place on Route
versus.
7 to build a new fire
Yeah,
station.
well, we're gonna have.
15, 16 million.
No, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, I think as we're looking at a building committee or something like that, we need to make a determination,
Yeah.
what path,
Right.
and then that will help, I think, drive the
But
resolution
I
for the
think the
committee.
decision, at least tonight for this agenda item, is we wanna stay
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
as
Yeah, I
the
agree.
group that has the impact and, direct contact, and so let's leave it like that, and then we can revisit it if we see that there are other paths that we're gonna take.
But,
Just to Doug's, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just to Doug's point about, we gotta decide what we're gonna do with Tecton. I don't think we're gonna have to decide what we're gonna do with Tecton. I think they've already decided. When we talked to them, I kinda got the impression that they were pretty much gonna see this to the end as far as the as far as the repairs from the trust. Because I think you asked them, or you did at one point, if you'd be interested in going on. They kind of hemmed and hawed,
Yeah, they
and they were like,
danced.
you know, we have other clients that we have to make sure we're not taking away from there. They seem to be,
Yeah, it may just be worth
Maybe
asking them.
finish this
They seem
part
to be
of
all
the
set with
contract.
no
Yeah, well,
Smithfield.
that's
Because
okay.
they did
Well,
allude to today, the contract could be amendable, so that's why I
Right,
was
because the
wondering.
first meeting we had with them, because we hadn't done anything real, like, we hadn't moved forward with any repairs, they were kind of like, well, we would have to look into that and let
Right.
you know.
right,
The second meeting, when we did move ahead with repairs, and we asked them, you know, if they thought about the contract, and then they were more favorable, because I think they saw that but even so, I mean, there are other architects,
yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
people out there, and, you know, they're great to work with, but it also goes with, you know, A, B, or C, like, are they the gold, and, you know, like, they're doing great, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying,
Can I just
like-
make a suggestion on that? Can I
Mhm.
talk?
Yeah,
Based on who you're gonna choose, I've always said from the beginning, whatever RFP, if that's what you're gonna put out, or interview, it has, my opinion, the company that takes on a job like this has to deal in the law enforcement fire world of construction, that's all.
mhm.
So you do have A, B, and C, but as long as all the Bs know and have built and have experience that you can research and look to see what work they've done with law enforcement buildings, then that's, in my opinion, that's who I would go with. And that's who I would compare across the board in architecture, construction, that they've done this, they've built these, they've designed them, and there's work you can look at that you can look at and say, oh, that's a nice station, they did a good job.
Right.
And you can talk to other politicians or government people that say, are you happy with their?
I think
their
before
work?
you get to the
That's-
RFP, you'll have the RFQ, which would,
So I would
throw
go
out
with an
anybody that
experienced
isn't
company that
qualified.
does this kind of construction,
Yeah.
and that would be my 2
So
cents.
let's look at what our list is and then start hammering away at some of
Yeah.
these things first. Yeah. That's a
I
lot.
think just, maybe just leaving this meeting, chief, is, you know, they already said on the call that the drain line would probably be a separate repair on our end, and that thimble would be a repair on our end, so maybe, because we're going into budget season, I would maybe try and get, you know, make some
Mhm.
calls and try and get an idea, so that way we can put it in your budget, so that we can
that's a good
work
point.
on this stuff, you know, and anything else, like, you know, maybe you know, maybe
The
some of, like,
the boiler thing? as
yeah,
well,
and
too?
like the paint, you know, like just kind of get, like, you know, your list that are kind of like smaller scope items. Like maybe get some quotes or some sort of idea, so that way we can put it in your budget, so we can keep chipping away at it, because, you know, the bond money's gonna run out, right? So,
And that's what we're up against, right?
Right.
So that's what I
Right.
wait for to say, okay, my last ditch effort, or last ditch decision to spend money is to go into capital, because I don't wanna make my budget any more bigger
Right.
than what it is.
no, this
So-
should definitely go in your.
And I get it,
Yeah.
and to be honest with you, for the 3 years I've been chief, there's been a lot going on other than the building because of COVID and the George Floyd issues and stuff. Is that even as a captain, it's always been waiting for that money to be released, or because there's always been some, now we're kind of like, okay, hands are not tied, the bond question, everyone took a deep breath and whatever side you're on, and now it's available, we have our work orders, we have a list, we're gonna get a better list, and like you said, whatever money runs out, I'll definitely run to capital and say, okay. The only thing with peers like that, and Ray knows about it, it's not like a big chunk you can say, easy project, you go A to Z. It's like you got a little here, a little there, it's
Right.
almost like you need a maintenance janitor,
Yeah.
you know, Mr.
How
Fix-It
about
guy to
that?
say, you know, it's like small, you're in between the small
Facilities
job
manager.
and the big job, right? And
Yeah.
it's all these little things, all these little fires you have to put out.
Mhm.
But it's great, you know, I think we're moving forward and we're getting progress now.
I think
Yeah.
one of the other things, maybe as piggybacking off what you just said, Kim, I think maybe some of the asbestos abatement and like the ceilings and stuff like that, you know, regardless of how long the solution is, it may just be good to know from a cost perspective to build it into a future plan. Because I know you keep mentioning it, if we are gonna stay there longer than a few years and more work needs to be done, might as well just, if it's feasible, remove it, so that way nobody has to worry about it in the future. So even if it's not like a year or 2 year thing, at least it's something we can plan towards.
It's always there. It's always
Yeah, it's
there.
hanging out.
You demo something, what do you do with that?
Right, well,
Right.
yeah, as long as
Yeah.
you don't demo, you're all set.
Okay, so yeah, if you can look at those, you know,
100%.
perfect.
Great.
Anyone have anything else?
Oh, I'm good.
All right, so we'll wait for an email from Rebecca about seeing if we're gonna be doing this on the January 2nd
Yeah, it should
council
make
agenda.
sense.
If not, we'll schedule our next meeting, and then, if not, then we'll just talk about our next meeting at the council meeting.
Great.
Sounds good.
All right,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Merry
Thanks,
Christmas.
Thank you, have a nice.